And I'll roll with your substance. Sis, you know we on a mission, no games. Help each other get over some things. Build strength, bring change. Cause we've been through the rain. Now it's time to shine like bling. Let's talk about life skills. We building up our quality to right wills. We rolling out of poverty. Love heals. So we become the prodigy of how a sistership could be a really hot commodity. Stand together, we united, hold hands. Support each other dreams and our plans. Doing everything we can. Come on.
Excited for many different things today. Ladies, you guys are coming in on our first day back into the studio after the third, fourth, fifth scare of COVID. I don't even know.
Yeah, long time.
It's been a long time, and the energy in the studio is always much better than home. So we're so happy to have you all with us today. This is your girl, Stefire. I have my co-host here, Jane Spicy.
Hello, everybody.
We're excited. I want to say first, let's just quickly say happy Blessed Sunday, happy Palm Sunday for those who celebrate today. Mm-hmm. Also, it is National Siblings Day for all of us who have siblings. I have 3 sisters. I'm sure some of you, if not all of you, have siblings that you want to say hello to. Hello, all the siblings out there. And of course, Jane is our sister. We have the Sistahship. So those are our siblings as well. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We're here every Sunday, 2:00 Eastern Standard Time. Today we have an amazing topic. It's one that brings a lot of awareness to autism. And today the topic is going to be the Colorful Puzzle of Autism. Now, before we go there and introduce our amazing panel here, I just want to quickly say we do have an announcement. August 27th from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., we are going to be at Dansbury Park in East Stroudsburg for Unity in the Community. This is an amazing day for everyone to get together, all organizations. We have vendors. We're going to have amazing DJs, Gynesis Radio's coming and rocking the house. We have some amazing music. We're going to have a lot of other special things that I don't want to give away. But if anybody's interested in attending, please mark your calendars. August 27th, we need to come out of this house. And we're going to be in an open environment. We're going to be in a park, so much safer than being indoors. So come one, come all, enjoy the day with us. It's going to be an amazing day. And there's information out on Facebook, on all social media platforms. Unity in the Community, August 27th, 11 to 7. So please join us there. Now, let's talk about autism awareness. So April is Autism Awareness Month. April 2nd, I believe, is the day that we actually have set aside for autism awareness.
World Autism Day.
World Autism Day. Thank you. That's why we have the experts here. Just saying. So with that said, I want to introduce our amazing panel here because we have expertise in the room who's going to help to guide the conversation, provide us insight, understand what resources are available, and all the amazing things that they do to help with autism. Families, friends, loved ones, educators, and so on and so forth. I think that, myself, I'll speak for me, I'm not very well aware of all the intricacies of autism. Have friends that have autistic children, and I would love to know more. And I'm sure there's many people out there, if you're not actually very close to autistic children or families that have autistic children, may not know enough. Right. So we want to feel comfortable. We want to educate people so they feel comfortable with the subject and they're comfortable around people who are autistic. So with that said, I'm going to go to Michelle, who will introduce herself and let you know everything about Michelle and as it relates to autism awareness and what she does.
So I'm Michelle DeMarsh. I'm the founder of Pennsylvania Autism Action Center. And I founded that 9 years ago, actually, on World Autism Day. Awesome. And we wanted to offer more to the kids in this community because at that time there were some services available. They were all over the place. And we wanted to be able to give people a place they could go that would be like a hub of everything. They're able to get all the services they need all the opportunities for social in one place.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being here today and helping us through this
No problem.
this topic. Rachel, how are you?
Hello, my name is Rachel Becker. I am the clinical director of the ABA department at the Pennsylvania Autism Action Center. I have a master's in ABA, and I've done tons of work to become a board certified behavioral analyst.
Nice.
So I have that certificate, and I'm also currently in a doctorate of psychology program to become a clinical psychologist.
Awesome. Blessings to
very
you.
nice.
Awesome.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Great. Taraz, let me tell you just quickly about Taraz, who is here with us today. We had women's Women of Excellent Awards celebration for Women's History Month, and Taraz actually was honored as well for Women of Excellence in March. So we're very happy to have her here today as well. Taraz, give us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I very much so appreciate it. Like she said, my name is Taraz Crowley. I am the program manager for Monroe County Special Olympics. We deal with individuals with special needs, many different individuals, but specifically with individuals with autism, we have children and we have adults. So we kind of see them through different things from as early as 8 all the way up to whenever. So
Adulthood. Yeah.
I've been doing that for 22 years. I've been with
Wow.
Monroe County
Wow.
Special Olympics, so
Wow.
it's pretty special.
That is absolutely special.
Great
I
accomplishment.
love the fact that we're in such amazing company today. And we do appreciate the Sistahship Gynesis Radio for everyone to be here today. And our amazing Jane as well,
Oh.
Miss Spicy, who's going to help us through this topic as well. With that said, I think, again, kind of going back to, and I know we've had a little bit of an earlier discussion that I don't know much about autism, right? And I really want people to really understand what it is.
Mhm.
So, and there's all these, there's so much information out there, right? As far as the age you can find out when you're autistic or a child is autistic. And there's a lot of parents that are concerned because the minute you throw out, they're either not speaking, right? Or whatever, it's immediate panic, right? Because I have to find out what's
Absolutely.
wrong with my child. Can you kind of give us at least an understanding of, from an age range perspective or identification, what exactly would be the best way to help identify autism in a child?
Yeah, so there are some precursors of behaviors that occur before the child is 2 years old. Most developmental pediatricians wait until 2 years old to give like an official diagnosis. But a lot of moms report that their kids don't want to be picked up or don't want to be held, or they don't really look towards them. At a certain age, the kid should be able to follow your finger. And most times with kids with autism, they don't quite do that. They don't really seem to pay attention to other people in the room at all. They won't respond to their name, and there's always that lack of communication. You can always talk to your pediatrician right away if you have concerns. But like I said, most wait until 2 years old because some kids just grow out of those behaviors, while some it's a symptom of the diagnosis.
And that's actually important, I think, to your point is, see the pediatrician. Have those conversations, let them be aware of what's going on to correctly identify what's going on, because there could be later development, for certain children, they develop a little later. So it doesn't always have to be, oh my God, they're autistic. So what does that mean for me? Go ahead.
No, absolutely. I was agreeing. Sometimes, you always hear that story about, my husband didn't speak until he was 4, and that is true. Some people hit milestones later, but it's better to work with your doctor and get some treatment early, because it might be something they grow out of. But if it's not, then we're already getting the treatment, and we're going to be so much more ahead later. We might be able to hit milestones to get us into a typical kindergarten or all through school to catch up. That's kind of happened.
So when they said, can each of you explain what exactly that means when they talk about that? being on the spectrum?
Well, from a clinical standpoint, the autism spectrum disorder is actually made up of several different other disorders. So before the DSM-5 was created, they had disorders like Asperger's, which people are a little bit more aware of. But they also have things like Rett syndrome, PDD, NOS, which is pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified. And I'm blanking on the other two disorders, but it's they all share similar traits. So the powers that be that create this DSM and they decide what symptoms really go into a diagnosis, they decide to put all 5 of these into one disorder. And as anyone who's medicated on the spectrum, it's very, very hard to say like all this huge population is all just one thing. So they determined that the biggest things to be on the spectrum, you have to have a communication delay, some kinds of behavioral issues, and usually you have some kind of social awareness or lack of social awareness. So all 5 of these disorders were kind of put together, and they debate how to use terminology for it because some people don't like high and low functioning, or sometimes they use levels of level 1 is more is a higher functioning, level 3 is a lower functioning. But whichever way you do it, it just kind of helps practitioners like myself to determine like how many services or what kinds of services a child's going to need. So the big spectrum, everyone gets diagnosed if they meet certain criteria, but then they go more into specifics depending on where they fall on the spectrum.
So like a breakdown of specific symptoms goes into different categories as to what type of.
So I always explained it as we're thinking of a spectrum. You think of that the thing that goes in front of the light that creates the rainbow. Now think of a kaleidoscope instead. So people on the spectrum you might have somebody who has really strong communication skills, but they actually lack social skills. They don't know when not to say something as well. So that might be one piece for them. And then where there's another person who doesn't have the ability to verbally tell you something, they have to use a iPad or a picture chart to tell you something. But at the same time, socially, they know it's time, they can recognize the social cues. So everybody on the spectrum looks so much different. But they have to have these certain things to get on the spectrum. That's why you can hear about a child who bangs their head and doesn't have any words and they're very frustrated all the time. But then you also hear about Dan Aykroyd, who's on the spectrum and has been diagnosed, and Bill Gates. Obviously, they're doing pretty well for themselves and are on the spectrum. So it is a huge, giant spectrum, and it can have all these different things.
What's the common? So I think you mentioned something about common elements. So what are the common elements when they diagnose you're autistic? Because then to your point, it can vary based on where they are in the spectrum. What are the actual commonalities of someone who's autistic?
So there are tons of symptoms.
Okay.
I believe when you look into the DSM, which is the diagnostic manual, so any doctor that's going to diagnose has to compare it to this manual. I believe there's upwards of like 15 different things. But to be diagnosed, you only need about like 5 or 6.
Okay.
So that's why it gets so hard to and why there's a need for a spectrum, because like Michelle said, some people are going to have these symptoms, some people are going to have these symptoms, but it all falls underneath the same thing.
Got it.
Those symptoms all relate back to behavior, communication, and socialization.
Got it. Okay.
So Taraz, you do Special Olympics for those particular groups. What are the challenges of being able to categorize them into what sport they would do well in, or do you just let them try everything?
Honestly, it's by choice. We don't ever, force someone into a specific sport or a specific area that they want to train, compete in. We let them choose. And with Special Olympics, it is meant to fit everyone. It is meant for any person that walks through our door that wants to be part of our program. They fit. There's always a place for them. So really it's more of what they want to do. When they come to our program, what do they want to get out of it? What sports do they want to play? I mean, we have some who are honestly just there for the social aspect of it
Mhm.
because they lack that so much in their everyday life.
Right.
So they come to us and they meet so many different people, and for them it's family, it's friends, it's
Mhm.
more than just sport for them.
Yeah.
So it's really it's teamwork to decide what works best for them.
Mhm.
You know, we might have one who comes in and they're the greatest athlete you could ever come across and they play every sport, and then we might have some who come in and they're kind of shy and they're not really very athletic or whatnot, but they enjoy being there and it's socially for them, it just puts them on different levels. So
Yeah. Now, is that a year round?
we are a year-round program.
Oh, okay.
We do our
Mhm.
program is split up by different seasons, and each season we have different sports. Right now we are hard training in our basketball and track programs.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it just depends on the time of year, what
Mhm.
sports
Yeah.
we may be training in.
And
So,
how many kids do you usually see in a?
we have right now we have training in our track program 35 athletes.
Wow.
And
That's
in our
great.
basketball program right now, we have probably close to 30 athletes training in our basketball program right now. Our track program is typically our biggest sport this time of year.
Mhm.
But again, we have a lot of athletes training in
Yeah.
both sports. So
Wow, that's fantastic. I didn't realize
yeah,
that you did it all year round.
we
That's
do
great.
it. Yeah, we do it
Yeah.
all year long. So.
And I know you do fundraisers.
We do fundraisers. We are a nonprofit, so we do heavily rely on obviously our community, our sponsors, our donors, our families, our community is very good to us. So
Wow.
That's amazing. We
Mhm.
definitely have to get, before we even end the show, make sure we get people your information across the board so that people know who to reach out to and engage. One thing, this comes up a lot and I see it all the time about what causes autism, right? And I think that's always a big sticking point for a lot of people, especially when we talk about, vaccination. And here we
It is a
are.
very tough subject because we don't have a
Yeah.
solid answer yet.
Yeah.
And it's just not there. I go with the theory there are multiple causes. There's definitely those families where there's the genetic piece. They know that there's a cousin on the spectrum, and
Mhm.
Edna had some things that they thought were maybe on the spectrum, but she got through it. And then there are cases where there's no one on the spectrum in the family and they just don't know where it came from. And especially some kids have late onset autism, so they don't have all those symptoms when they're younger. It comes a little bit later for them. And that's tied into why a lot of people were thinking, the vaccinations. There's really no evidence to show that. But I'm not going to tell a parent who comes in and says
Yeah.
to me, this is what happened to my baby.
Yeah.
We want to help that kid and we want to hear that family and support them no matter what. So that's the stance we have with it at this point. At some point, maybe some other information will come out, but at this point, it's still not a clear, defined reason why
Yeah.
this happens.
Yeah. And that's, I think, what the struggle with a lot of people are, is because they don't know what drove it. To your point, I mean, there might not be any hereditary things
Absolutely.
that come to play. So that's kind of the one thing that everybody is going to, because you don't really have the answers. But to your point, the important part is addressing what is now, regardless of what's happened, because that's going to have to be left to scientists and doctors and
Sure.
so on and so forth to understand. And to your point, it could be years of research.
But if we can treat it and help make the symptoms less severe so that they can have their best life, why wouldn't we just do that?
Absolutely.
What's it matter the cause? Of course, we want to eventually find that, but
Yeah.
and some people it affects everybody on the spectrum is affected, but some people are affected less and feel it's a superpower for them, and power to them too. So we wouldn't want to take that away from them. If that's who they are, it makes them who they are. That's great.
God created a huge spectrum of people, and I don't want to get all religious because I know not everybody's like that, but your higher power, we're all different and created differently for many different reasons. So I just say it is what it is, and you just have to take it and work with it and just be the best of who you are for everyone else and for yourself. Right. So I love the fact that you actually said that. The other thing is there's a lot of myths out there, again, and it's funny because when I was listening to Therese and I'm like, man, I'm like, some of these social things like are just normal for people. And I think that's why people struggle with the subject of autism, because they may not be autistic. It's just who they are. And I think that's why it's such a concerning topic for some folks, because they feel because of their social
Label.
the
They don't wanna
labeling,
be labeled.
right?
Yeah.
It's the label. I don't want to be labeled
Right.
autistic. What are some of the challenges you see? And I know you have families that come in all the time. And what are some of the concerns that come up and discussions that are had that really stick out for you guys?
So a big thing for me is the not understanding what autism is. It is a developmental disorder, and unfortunately, some symptoms can look very similar to intellectual disability disorders. So there's a lot of that confusion and thinking that, like, oh, my kid just doesn't understand things. Not always the case. And unfortunately, you can have intellectual disability disorder as a comorbid diagnosis with autism, but they're not the same thing. So you can have kids that don't speak who understand exactly what you're saying. Those are usually like the kids that can get away with anything because you underestimate them.
Right.
But so that education to parents of like, this is not what autism is. Autism looks completely different, and you can have a very successful and fulfilling life with autism without supports if you get the services at a young age so that they have the time to really build those skills up.
What are some of the, I think about different communities and the access to, just doctors and being able to identify this early on.
So I have a thought on this. I was thinking about it on the way here. The CDC says 1 in 44 people have autism, but in New Jersey, 1 in 28 people have autism. In Monroe County, it's a lower number than the 44. It has changed, and now the CDC isn't giving out that information. I just don't think they've collected it recently.
Mm-hmm.
But and what's the reason for that? And I actually think the reason is because we have good doctors. We have a lot of teachers who know what they're looking for. So you have preschool teachers who aren't afraid to say to a parent, I think you need to go see a developmental pediatrician or call early intervention and get some additional treatment. So I truly think it's because we have some very aware and diligent people in this area. I don't know that the number really is higher in New Jersey than it is in the rest of the country. Because mysteriously in New Jersey, in California, places where there's a lot of pediatricians and a lot of teachers and a lot of education, there's a higher number. I truly think it has to do with being aware of identifying it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think that
Yeah.
kind of, is one of the things to think of there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think also, again, we run into these social environments or these communities that, to your point, some people are well versed in identifying it and some are not. What are some of the things, and that's where I think I'd like to understand is from an education standpoint, because you're right, there might be children even at a younger age that don't, the parents either just don't have the ability to see, get the services, or, they're saying, oh, they'll be fine once they go to school. And
I do hear that a lot.
you
Like, just
see the
once-
socialization,
Once
right?
they go to preschool, or my kid didn't go to preschool, once they get into kindergarten, I'm sure this stuff will clear up because they'll have exposure to other kids and they'll see it. And I wish it was that easy. And that does help. But, having that practice and working like in a facility like ours, we have social skills groups and we have direct services, can give them that skill set so that when they get to kindergarten, they're ready for it, because kindergarten isn't play anymore. It's hardcore academics now.
It is now. I remember I just had to learn how to write my name and know where I lived.
Yeah.
And now it's like, duck, duck, goose. And now it's like, math and all this other stuff
Absolutely.
that's going on, which I love because,
It's
as
good.
kids are younger, they're learning, they're more progressive. But for educators, because I go back to, they're spending a lot of their day with the teacher, right? In the classroom. God bless the teachers out there. I'm just going to say that. For everything that you deal with, because you're with these children, long hours of the day while parents are working and what have you, and then they're home. What are some of the things that, do you offer any services to schools or Great. Can we talk about that? Because I think that's a great point to make, especially for any educators out there, any schools out there that want to learn more or be versed
Sure.
in identification and help to identify to help parents then know what they need to do next. So what are your
Yeah, so our ABA therapy is direct one-on-one services. So we only have RBTs, which are registered behavioral technicians. So they go through 40 hours of training to teach like what is autism and how to provide effective therapy. And then they're supervised every week to make sure that they're providing the correct therapy. And that allows us we go into homes, we go into communities, we will go into schools, wherever the behaviors or need us. We'll go there and we'll work with teachers and parents and cousins and aunts and uncles and anyone who's in the kids' lives on how to handle different behaviors and when to reinforce and when to kind of remind them of what they need to do and stuff. And we just try and help everyone to learn as much as they can about specifically this kid and their version of autism and what they need to understand the world around them.
Absolutely. And then we're also, we've also been called on by districts to come in and do trainings with paraprofessionals. And it's funny because in one of the school districts, we were doing it with the paraprofessionals in the morning. We had a second group that afternoon. And the principal had sat in and said, no, I'm going to get everybody out of the other trainings and bring them over to this one. Even the teachers who have been in, we just thought they were so valuable. I was so grateful that they thought that. But absolutely been in the different schools and been able to offer that. There's also another organization. It's a statewide organization called PATAN, and they also offer these services. It's a free service for schools to come in and do the same thing. They're happy to teach teachers and work directly with them so that they can provide a better classroom scenario. Yeah. And all different. They'll go into a mainstream classroom where there's a kid who might just have some social need, but they'll also go into some of the autistic support classrooms and help those teachers get the newest and best information so that they can be providing the best intensive teaching to those kiddos. So there's a lot of good stuff out there, and we try to be one of the, positive organizations that go out and do this as much as we can.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's such a need out there to raise with your experience and kind of, the children you've worked with. How engaged are you with, again, the resources that are available out there to help, even from the Special Olympics? Because I'm sure there's, you're working with these children all the time. And, to your point, the spectrum that they're on and how comfortable they are in social environments, because they can range, right? How are you working with those type of organizations to kind of help?
I mean, we try to work directly with all of the schools here. Work directly with teachers, work directly with gym teachers and whatnot in schools. But I'm sure everybody probably thinks if everybody works together and everybody has basically the same goal, I think that's probably the best tool that we have, because if everybody's working towards the same goal, then everybody has that individual's best interest at heart. Right. So like I said, we work directly with schools. We go into the schools. We do different things with teachers, with gym teachers, whatnot, because we are in essence servicing the same individuals. So we want to make sure that everybody's working together, everybody's on the same page. I mean, and the schools are so open to us being there and working to better the life in school, outside of school, whether it's in sports, whether it's at home, wherever it is, just bettering their everyday life. Right. So we work, very close with schools and different organizations. I mean, I actually happen to meet a lot of people at that, at Women's of Excellence thing you spoke about earlier. And it was a really great thing to see that there's so many other organizations and so many other people that we can connect with, and we've already made connections with people from that day. So like I said, I say this all the time, our community is really good. Yes, really, really good people, really, really good organizations, just educators, just everybody. So it really is just one big family working out one amazing goal. So,
I think in this community, the platforms that everyone gives everyone else the opportunity to talk about what they do is what makes the community good. And I've been here since 1972, and I will tell you, I raised 3 sons. I didn't do that alone. They had great teachers, great staff at the schools, great coaches, religious instructors. So everybody plays a role, in it. So, but my question, I guess, is what I would like for you guys to elaborate on is when, you okay?
I just had to cough it out.
I was gonna say, it wasn't one of those
I know.
candies, was it?
No, don't.
By the way, speaking of which, if anybody can see on social media, we have an amazing setup here. We're colorful displays. Our girl Tiffany Kobling, thank you so much. Go ahead.
Edible.
Edible candies. We
That
just
was the
thought
first-
you ended up choking on one of
No,
the
I was-
edible candies.
That was the first thing I asked, because they look like little marbles, actually.
And I'm sorry, Jane.
That's okay. Now you know I'm old. So
Oh my
I
God, I
can't
totally
remember
interrupted her.
Yeah.
It was about communities.
Oh yeah. So in our community though, do you find it challenging to work with other programs that offer the same services that you do? Or is there a competition or that kind of thing? I'm asking.
Of course.
Not so much with other organizations that are doing something, different. We all
Yeah.
try to collaborate.
Right.
And one of the things that when I started PAC, that was one of the things that I thought was so important
Mhm.
was the collaboration.
Mm.
So if somebody has behavioral services through another agency, but they're getting occupational therapy or the feeding therapy at PAC or speech with us, I always tell them, please bring your team. We're happy to collaborate. We want to learn about what you guys are doing so we can practice it, and we want you to know what we're doing so you can reinforce it in your therapy. I think overall there wasn't a lot of competition until recently.
Mm.
We were the only place that did this kind of work for a long time.
Mm.
There are some new organizations out there that are awesome. I hate to say it this way, but there's kind of enough autism for everybody. There are wait lists at every place because there's just not enough BCBAs.
Resources,
There's
yeah.
just not enough people that are able to run these programs. So we're doing our best. We keep trying to grow our program.
Mhm.
We do a lot of growing from within. People who come in as RBTs, which is our first level, and we train them. And then we're like, hey, you're doing great at this. Why don't you consider moving up to a BCBA? But there's a shortage. There's a shortage of speech therapists.
Mm.
We just don't have enough people doing this type of work. So even though there's other agencies, if somebody goes to another agency, it's probably because they could get them in the door. And so we try to be supportive. When there is a wait list on our side, we try to give parents the information about other organizations that we've heard good things about because we want them to get the therapy. It's not a matter if
Yeah.
they get it from us.
Right.
So I tried to make an organization that has the feeding, the speech, the occupational therapy, and the ABA all under one place because when I was working with kids one-on-one, I was traveling to Allentown with one family, and then we were going to Scranton with another family because they wanted occupational therapy or speech somewhere, or they were going to a swimming program at ESU, and you spent your whole nights going from place to place to place. And they were awesome places, but there was no place that did everything. And, that was kind of our goal, was to have a little bit of everything under one
roof.
roof.
so that the kids were already acclimated with the place.
And they don't have to be running from
Yeah.
place to place, which, consistency, making sure that they have a safe environment and that they're not constantly moving from location to location.
Absolutely.
Because that can cause
Yeah.
some anxiety.
And
in
change
children.
is a challenge, right?
Change
For
is
Absolutely.
kids with autism.
Yes.
Yeah.
And our goal is to make it a place that when they walk in, they feel warm and safe.
Mm.
So even though they might not love this therapy as much as that therapy, they know this is their safe place,
Mhm.
and reinforcing them and that they want to come back to
Right.
PAC. That was, the mindset.
So
I guess
back-
it still is the mindset.
Well, yeah, no, I just wanted to, we do have some questions that are coming in
Okay.
on the
Okay.
internet, so I want to get to that shortly, but anybody who has any questions or comments, quick questions, quick comments, we are taking calls. We're live in studio now, so I'm very excited about that. Love to talk to people. 888-304-4401 if you have any questions, comments, if you have a child who's autistic, if you have any questions in relation to autism, please call in. If you are autistic, please call in 888-304-4401. We'll take your question and your comment. We'll answer it So we appreciate anybody that wants to call in. Before we kind of get to you, I know
No, I
you don't
forget.
want to forget your question.
That's okay, I already
I
forgot.
already forgot. I'm sorry.
Come back to me.
One question that actually a viewer had, Evelyn Quinones, is it true that boys are nearly 5 times more than girls that are diagnosed? And I remember seeing this. Is it more with boys than it is, or is it we're just identifying it back to what you were saying? Like, what's the view on that?
Statistics, yeah.
A little bit of both. I believe the last official thing that they put out there was out of pretty much 3 out of 4 people diagnosed are going to be boys. So about 75% of those diagnosed. It does play a factor into gender roles because a lot of times you hear that like girls are better at masking their autism. They kind of will shadow what other people do and mimic other people more than boys will, where boys are just like, you go on that side. So that definitely plays a factor in it. But I think there's also partially the hereditary side of things, which, like we said, it's not official that it's a hereditary way of that autism is created, but part of those research, they did say that it would usually come from the male side, so like from fathers and stuff. So that plays a factor in it.
It's interesting. It's interesting.
Very interesting.
Do you remember your?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I gave her that time.
So back in the day when I went to school, and I graduated in 1971, so I'm way back there. They didn't infiltrate kids with autism, mental illness, or anything like that into the, how can I put it, the regular classrooms. However, they do that now, correct? When did that happen, and what was the benefit, do you think, for kids with autism to be put into regular classrooms with aids, right?
That is still growing, and that's
Okay.
not everywhere.
Oh,
But I have to say, you probably did have kids with autism in your class. You just didn't know. Maybe there was that quirky kid in class that you always had to say, the bell rang, come on. Or
oh yeah,
something
there
like
was
that.
a lot of that. I was one of them, actually.
Right. But you could have been, and
Yeah.
a lot of people have successfully dealt with their autism and have had successful lives without treatment, though their lives would have been probably easier if they had the treatment. But there was also, people always say, why did the number grow so much? Why is this number growing so much of autism? But a lot of people were just considered, they kind of went with MR back then, We don't really know, but we just think you're MR of some sort. You can't learn. I mean, it's kind of the story of Forrest Gump when you think about it. They didn't have a diagnosis for him. He just couldn't learn, and they were trying to put him in the special ed classroom. But that probably wasn't the right placement for him. And, I mean, he was fictional, but you know what I'm saying? So
Right.
That held true back then, and it held true now. But a lot of people got falsely labeled. They probably have typical IQs or maybe even higher IQs, but ended up in special ed classrooms. So they weren't integrated. There is a lot of evidence that shows that people that are on the spectrum that get exposure to mainstream classrooms have more opportunities to grow and learn from those peers. So there is some stuff. A lot of places do have aids, but a lot of places say if you need an aid, then you should be in a more restricted classroom. And I mean, even here in Pennsylvania, we kind of fight this battle all the time, where we think there's a kid who would do great in a mainstream classroom with an aid, and the school's like, if they need an aid, they should be in autistic support. So it's still a battle. It's not happening as much as you think, but the places it is happening, there is there is success to be said. I have to say the other end of that is there are kids that really do better in a smaller classroom set up for autism. And you shouldn't be afraid. If you think your kid's going to do better in that autistic support setting, go for it. That's what it's there for. It's not always perfect for that kid to be in a mainstream setting. Maybe you can encourage them to have him sit with his homeroom, his real homeroom, at lunches and at specials. Or maybe they're great at one subject. Maybe they go there for math. But a lot of times, having a quieter classroom with less peers, less stuff on the walls is going to be a place where they can focus better and be able to meet their academic potential better. So each person is different, and the big saying in autism is if you met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. It's true. So you have to really cater their IEP, their individualized education plan, specifically for each person as it lands.
I was just going to ask
So-
about IEP. Go ahead.
In the state though of Pennsylvania, what are some of the things that you think can be done immediately to focus on your programs to help identify or even protect kids with autism? What do you feel the need? If you could have someone here right in front of you that can say, I can do that and fix it, what would that be? Can you think of? You could
There's
probably think of
opportunities.
many.
I
yeah.
look to you because I'm like, there's a lot.
The biggest thing is going to always be staffing and education for those providers. And unfortunately, just there's not enough resources out there. Like Michelle said, there's enough autism for everyone, and there's more than we can actually handle because everyone has wait lists. It takes upwards of 2 weeks to fully train someone, more than that if you want them to fully understand what they're doing. And then you have to always be overseen by someone. So the people who actually create the treatment plans and the programming for these kids, they're telling someone else what to do. So like you have the big education up here at the top, and it's a trickle down to get to the kid just because it's a lot of time, energy, and effort. So that's definitely the biggest thing is just providing as many resources as possible. And then it's not even just the difference of what the kids need, but it's what the families need as well. And that's there might be one parent whose their end goal for their kid is to be in that general education classroom, where another person, it might be that they're getting A's on every test. And so then we have to figure out how to best go about those treatment plans and everything to encompass what the family wants, what the kids need, and what everyone can provide.
Families. I wanted to talk about that because, we talk about the children who are autistic, but there's a family component in there as well, as far as what they feel is best for their child and what they may still be struggling with as far as, now knowing their child is autistic and then what spectrum they're in. How are those relationships with the families been, and are we able to get them to really, do right by their children? I hate to say it that way, but again, there's sometimes you're just struggling with the fact that, oh my God, my child is autistic, but then how do you get beyond that?
It really varies.
Yeah.
I have to say one of the really cool things that we have at PAC is a parent education program. It's a monthly program. Now the parents do have to, when they are provided our intensive services, they do have to get some regular training by their team so they know how to utilize this. So if we're teaching their child to use, I don't know, the names of the food, we want them to know, make sure your kid says banana every time. Don't just let them say food or say eat. Have them say banana because we know we can do it. Things like that. But we also have this generalized program that meets monthly, and they do different skills each month. Some parents absolutely can do it and they love to learn from it. Some parents have their own deficits, and that's okay. And we try to meet them where they're at. But it's not always as simple as they don't want their kid to have success. They are already struggling with their own thing. And so we just do our best to get there.
Wow, we got a call coming in. All right, do I answer it here?
Yep.
Where's the button? The green one? Hello, this is the Sistahship. Hello, you're on the Sistahship.
Hi, this is Mama C.
Hey, Mama C.
And I have just so many questions. I think that maybe other people have as well. And, you know, one of the questions I have is autism often misdiagnosed?
Yes, but it's really hard to say. There's a lot of comorbid diagnoses that go with autism. So a lot of kids are also diagnosed with like ADHD. We're seeing an increase in ODD. And like I said, you can also have intellectual disability disorder, which is the replacement for MR now. So and as I said earlier, doctors wait until their kids are about 2 years old, but some kids grow out of certain behaviors, so they might be diagnosed with autism, but they're not really on the spectrum. They just needed a little bit more of that socialization and to learn skills, and now they don't really have as many symptoms. So it's all, again, as we're going to say a million times during this session, is it's all individualized and it all depends on the kid. But I do highly recommend getting second opinions, and once you look into services, then those providers will be able to let you know, and all services should be individualized to the kids. So if they don't have that specific diagnosis, or they do and they don't really need it, their services depend on their symptoms, and it's going to be very specific. Every behavioral service provider should be doing a functional behavioral assessment before starting services, and that's really going to tell us like where we need to focus.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Good point.
Okay. Also, can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Also, if I am the neighbor of a family that has an autistic child or autistic children, how can I best be a good neighbor
Such a good
to
question.
my neighbors and help? I think that, life is all about helping one another.
Yes.
But I think that because people are fearful of what they don't understand, and that's why shows like this are so essential, because it provides the education and hopefully the understanding we need to embrace one another, no matter what our circumstances are. So in a community where there might be autistic children, how can we best help our families of autistic children?
So I usually provide a training. I haven't been doing it because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Called Friends and Family.
Awesome.
And it is a training for grandparents, neighbors, cousins, and we talk about exactly this. And I have actually asked parents that came to the center, what would you like people to ask you or to know? Things like they do want to be invited, but if they say no, please still invite them to the next thing. It might be that something came up that time. Things like if you're running to the store and you're the neighbor, hey, do you need anything? Because I'm running to the store, because sometimes it's so hard to run out. When you have little kids at all, it doesn't even matter if they're on the spectrum. As a parent, I can attest to that. But just that kind of thing can be so helpful to a person who has a family member on the spectrum. And don't be afraid to ask some questions. You obviously don't want to get into someone's total, complete business, but how can I help you is, we want to be a good neighbor. Don't be afraid to say that, because that person is isolated. Sometimes their closest friends have typical kids who are in ballet and karate, and their kid can't maybe participate in those programs, and they feel totally isolated. And just having someone next door who's willing to talk to them, or a sister who would typically be saying, come to this, and then this time just says, what can I do for you, sis? So it's just so important to reach out and be connected.
That's awesome.
I think to kind of piggyback on what Michelle said, I think families, parents, caregivers, whatever, for their children with special needs, they want what everybody wants for their typical child also. They want them to have the normal life experiences. They want them to be included. So
Absolutely.
like she said,
Great point.
invite them to that party.
Great
Even
point.
if the answer is no, invite them every time. Like she said, ask them, hey, do you need something at the store?
Yep.
Hey, do you need some help out in the yard? Just the smallest, littlest thing could be such a major thing to a parent, to a family member, whatever. Like I said, they want for their child, their special needs child, their child with autism, the same exact thing everybody wants for their typical child.
You definitely want to
So-
be an ally. I was just thinking about something. Every year at Thanksgiving, this
Absolutely.
comes up. Yeah. Is that they'll say, I brought my kid to Thanksgiving. I have my child's preferred food. A lot of kids on the spectrum only eat certain foods. And then somebody else in the family would be like, well, you should make him eat this, or he would eat if he was hungry. And don't be that family member.
Exactly.
All right. If they want to
Yeah.
eat mac and cheese and
Yeah.
hot dog on Thanksgiving, say, here, you want me to heat it up in the microwave? Be that family member.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That really makes a huge difference.
because they have,
And ask questions.
Ask
Yeah,
questions.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
because they do have sensitivity, right?
Absolutely.
To certain
yeah.
textures and
One of
stuff
the
like
ones that I see a lot when Rachel was saying the different comorbidities, one of the ones I see is sensory processing,
Yes. Mhm.
and it's just kiddos, who maybe these lights are too bright.
Yeah.
Certain textures, like you said. Actually, our feeding program is called the SOS feeding program, and please correct me if I have it wrong. It's sequential something sensory, oral. Sequential oral sensory is what the SOS stands for. And it is a program where they use different textures of food to introduce more foods and get kids to expand their palate.
That palate.
Yeah. And it's really exciting because
That's
it's
awesome.
a cool program.
Yeah.
And-
Wow.
And I think people need to understand that regular parenting is stressful. So being the parent of an autistic child has got to take stress off the charts. And anything we can do to help a parent de-stress is so essential because, prolonged periods of stress leads to the mental health and well-being of the parent,
Right.
him or herself. So
Right.
I think we really have to step up our game when it comes to the humanitarianism department and just reach out and help each other because you know what? We are all one people. That I don't care what color, what religion, what gender, what nationality, whatever. We're all one people, and we are responsible for helping to care for one another. And that's all I have to say. And thank you, ladies, for being here today. And I'm finding this so interesting, and I'm coming up with questions in my mind. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
And I will keep watching and keep sharing.
Thank you,
Thank
Mama
you.
C.
Thanks,
Thank
Deb.
you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, talk to you. Mama C, she's our founder of the Sistahship. So I'm happy she called in because I know she's got as one of our queenagers, as Jane is, so much, knowledge and
I
experience.
don't know why they call me that. I'm only 30.
our princess ager. But I think it's important because you experience life and you start trying to figure out ways that we can do better
Right.
as humans, and I think, I don't know what discussion I was having with who, maybe Taraz, but it's coming to a point in our lives where we just want to be as humans. It doesn't matter your discipline, your whatever, your beliefs, whatever it is, everybody wants to be treated the same, with respect and dignity. And to her point, what is it that we can do to help each other, especially with those who have challenges within their own families or, friends or what have you. So I love the fact that she asked that question. So thank you, Mama C.
And I wanted to say, one of the biggest things that parents ask me to help out with is when we go out into the community, like grocery stores. My kid always tantrums, and then everyone stares at us.
Oh God,
That's such a big thing. And grocery stores are evil. They set it up to make your kid tantrum.
Yes, they do.
They
They do.
They want your kid to tantrum, so you'd be willing to
Buy
just buy them the chocolate bar and stuff. And parents are trying to be so strong to teach their kids good ways, and here everyone's out to get them. So a big thing of just, I have parents that tell me like, oh, you have someone walk by, they give you a sympathetic look, and that look that says, I've been there too, because whether your kid's on the spectrum or not,
Oh yeah.
they're gonna tantrum in the grocery store,
Absolutely.
and just offering that sympathetic look of like, I've been there, can make a parent feel so much better.
Yeah.
Because immediately the way that we're programmed is we're going to feel judged because the kid's tantruming.
Sure.
So helping them to show them that they're not being judged. I've read like stories of strangers that come up to grab the second baby so the mom can take
Yep,
care
I've
of
done,
one
yep.
and stuff.
Yep, I've
That's
done that.
an amazing story, amazing thing that you can do for parents.
Yeah.
Oh, I talked to the girl. I talked to the child as soon as they're because you try to take their focus away from what they're they're in the cereal aisle and mama wants to get the good cereal and the kid wants the chocolate cereal and they're they're having that tantrum. I mean, I have 11 nieces and nephews, so yeah, the boys have been pretty interesting in my family, so I can totally relate. But yeah, I think that's an important thing to say because I do see the looks sometimes and the and it feels judgment immediately. When you kind of see a parent struggling with their child and somebody's walking past like, oh my God, They're like
Oh,
literally,
they try to
do they
make eye
have to bring that
contact
kid
with
to
you.
the,
Like,
yeah.
I'm not on your team. I'm on her team.
I'm on her team. I'm on the one having a problem with her
Yeah.
child right
Yes.
now. Help her out instead of trying to
Yes.
dehumanize her. But no, I think that's an amazing thing. And again, I think it's all really about just being human, just being kind, just being understanding and not judging without knowing what that person's going through. And that's where I think the biggest struggle is, knowing what people are going through and just immediately judging them just by first glance or appearance or whatever have you. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
But you
we'll
know,
just- sorry.
I'm sorry, Rick. I was going to say, you're right about the grocery stores, though. I go into the milk and like $50-$60 later, I'm coming out with, who the heck knows? I mean, I'll start putting stuff away. And I'm like, what the hell did I buy this thing for? I can't believe I haven't bought this. But, you know, it's that, they set it up. You're right. Set it up for that
So
urge
about 10
fighting.
years ago, there was this movement towards creating what they were calling the family-friendly aisle, where they were going to have no candy and nothing. And I was a huge supporter of it. I was preaching it to all the grocery stores. This is so important for our families. Let us know. And it just didn't happen. I heard about it. I heard there were places doing it, but I did not see it around here.
Yeah.
And I understand why. They're a business and their job is to make money. But it would really be beneficial. And I hope someone hears this.
No, say it
It's
again.
probably very
Say it
boring.
again. We
Probably
want,
be very boring.
we
aisle,
want-
what'd you
first
say?
of
We
all.
want a
A
family.
family
Friendly.
friendly. It's a family friendly. I said aisle. I mean checkout. So it's one
Mhm.
checkout that doesn't have the little balloons,
Yeah,
the
oh,
toys,
the
the
candies,
candies, all
Yep.
those things. And it's specifically for anyone who has a little kid, but for people who maybe have someone on the spectrum who's not going to understand why they can't have that
Yeah.
at this moment.
Mhm.
And maybe they did do well and they've already been given, the parents said, if you do well, I'm going to get you this one particular thing. But now they're seeing there's 80 different particular things,
Mhm.
and that creates
The
you know,
candy, the balloons, the everything's sitting right there at the.
So-
at
So this was a thing, and I hope that it could be a thing again, which is a family-friendly checkout aisle.
I love
So,
that.
That's
yeah,
a great
I think
idea.
that's a great idea.
Yeah, I do too.
Or else use Instacart. That's
Yes.
all I'm saying.
I think that has helped a lot as
I
well.
would definitely use that aisle myself.
Yes.
I can tell you that.
It could help all of us.
I love the conversation. I think there's definitely a lot for people to learn and understand. I love the fact that, you know, when we talk about people who don't have children who are autistic, but friends and family members that can help with the parents that are dealing with this. From a family stand, I know you talked about classes or things that, you know, you engage people to come and invite them to learn. What's been some of the feedback in those type of situations? How are you getting, like, what's the feedback that you're given?
So we actually send out a survey after the mixers. We call them parent mixers.
Oh, I love that, parent mixers.
Yeah.
It makes it sound nice. Do you
Not-
serve
let me
drinks?
tell
Just
you,
like-
yeah, in the sixth-
We actually
Yeah.
we were gonna do a luau one and serve mocktails, but it ended up getting like snowed out, and so we're very excited for what we can do in the future. And Catherine Jean Boehm, who is one of our BCBAs, has been really working.
This is
really
her
hard.
baby.
Yeah, so she's taken this and just ran with it. And so how we set it up is usually like a 2-hour thing. We recommend that the parents bring their kids, and we provide some babysitting upstairs so they get that extra socialization. And it doesn't even have to be because we have our occupational and speech therapy clients as well. So they don't necessarily have to have an autism diagnosis to come. Just learn how to handle certain behaviors and what to do in certain situations. And we structure it so that the beginning part's going to be a little bit of a lecture because that's the
Yeah.
point of it. But then we always end with like just a group discussion, like, hey, what are some things that you guys are doing that have helped, or where are you guys struggling, and just allowing the parents to talk to each other.
That's awesome.
Because for some of them, this is part of the only other parent contact they have all month. So we try and expand it a little bit, and every now and then we do just babysitting services and have the parents go out. We have a restaurant
Oh my
nearby
God,
that gives
that's great.
10% discount for anyone that says that they're members of PAC, so then they can have a little date night and like actually breathe for a minute.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, so a lot of the feedback has been good feedback. They do want a little bit more of just the parent piece, which I'm like, I would love to, but at the same time, I need
The
to
focus,
be educational,
yeah.
and like that's really the point of it. But but definitely something that we could look into of just maybe just
Expansion.
parent mixer after dark.
Yes.
Expansion. I think that's actually a good point. I think, when we think about all the things that we're doing to help autistic children, and then the families that are having to manage through, with the education and at home treatments and so on and so forth. And then, just trying to be even independent as well, having those nights out with their spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever have you.
It is really hard because
Yeah.
you can't just call that teenager on your block that babysat all the other
Yeah.
neighbors' kids. They might not have the skill set, and you know, if your kid happens to be someone who is elopes, they run off. You want to make sure you are right there to see them, and so
Mhm.
parents sometimes their marriages often struggle because of
Yeah.
this. And I know now there are new things out there to help. There are different agencies that are helping to try to create, have people who are specific caregivers for people that are on the spectrum or have
Mhm.
other special needs, who aren't afraid to do a feeding tube if that's,
Mm.
needed. So there is stuff growing and getting better, but I mean, it is difficult when you don't have some of the luxuries. I mentioned before, I have a 16-year-old child. I can go out and know that he can make himself a meal, take care
Right.
of things. But I also care for a special needs adult. My sister-in-law lives with us,
Mm.
and she can't. So we always make sure there's someone available to take care of her. Luckily, my 16-year-old could do it. But if I had smaller children or older children that were on the spectrum, and I didn't have that support system of having my whole family able to help us with my sister-in-law, I don't know what we would do.
Yeah.
I've been lucky. I'm in the best case scenario.
Mhm. So Michelle, you said about 10 years ago you started this organization. Can you tell us why you felt the need to do that?
Sure. There were a couple things going on. I worked in this field already. I was a behavior specialist, and often I was given the kiddos that were nonverbal because I knew how to run a verbal behavior program. And I felt very comfortable working with those families. But I also knew that I was not a board certified behavior analyst like Rachel or Kat or a few other people at our office, Bobby. And I knew I didn't have all the skills I needed for it. So I would constantly call my BCBA friends and say, hey, I'm working with this kiddo and I'm at this level. What do I do next?
Mm.
And I kind of got to a point where I said, this is silly. I shouldn't be providing all this service directly to these kiddos. The board certified behavior analyst should be. And there was a change in the laws, and I said, we should do this. And then on top of it, I had so many kids that needed social skills. That was such a huge, huge need. And I would say to my bosses at other places, why don't we run a social skills group? And they're like, well, we don't know how you'd fund that. And it's not really appropriate because of HIPAA. And I was like, what if all the parents sign off? It's appropriate.
Mhm.
Well, how would we do that? And finally, I was like, I'll just do that. That's ridiculous. Let's just do it. So I took my tax returns and did it. I don't recommend people do that, but
But you were passionate about it,
I
so.
was, and I went and I started the company and thought it was going to be a couple little kids and maybe a social skills group. And I had mostly 12-year-olds who needed social skills. It turned out to be my biggest demographic. Now we have lots of little kids too. And we brought on another factor like I said, when I was a behavior specialist, I was running to an OT appointment with my one client in Allentown, and then I would be somewhere else, completely the next night. And it was a lot. And I just said, there's nothing in Monroe County that has OT or speech. There was only one speech place, and it was always booked. And there was no place. The feeding, people drive 4 hours to go to feeding. So when some of my team said we could build this feeding, I was like, yes, do it. Yes, what do we have to do? Because it's just it wasn't here. And even like North Jersey, you go, well, it's Jersey, but Northwest Jersey is kind of not populated,
Yeah.
or more like here in some ways.
Yeah.
So we have people that do cross over to come to us for these things. Because we're one of the only places offering it around here, and people that come down from Pike or come over from Carbon. Because it's just not, you would think there'd be more of that. And they are growing. I don't want to pay for too much competition, but they are growing. But, it just wasn't available. And people were going down just to the Hershey Clinic, which is an amazing program.
Mhm.
But it's Hershey.
Oh yeah.
So
it's a drive.
That's a
Yeah.
drive. So we were happy to be able to provide some of this stuff right here in Monroe County.
So talk about the actual programs you offer. What specifically for what type of, because to your point, it's a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So what are the services that you supply for parents and children?
Okay. Do you want to talk about ABA?
Yeah. So I'm the clinical director of our ABA and social skills departments. So like I said, our first step, whenever we bring in a kid, no matter what their age, I've had as young as 18 months. I currently have a 20-year-old. So our first step is doing that functional behavioral assessment, determining where they're at. Based on those assessments, we then make a medical necessity judgment of how many hours. So if you have a 3-year-old nonverbal, studies show that like 40 hours a week, which is a working day, it's a lot for kids, is the most helpful. So we kind of set up ABA like a mixture of a doctor's office and a daycare. So we have kids that come 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. or later. And that allows us to do all the different verbal behavior mapping, which tries to build out some of their communication skills. We teach them different like life skills and daily task skills. And then we also do like circle time and kindergarten stuff. And doing their letters and their numbers, anything that they might need depending on where they fall. Teaching them how to use the bathroom, how to wash their hands. And then they can also receive different social aspects. So they play games, they learn to take turns, learn to give each other things, because sharing is a big thing, because everything's mine.
I say that today.
And then it also is great because we can provide the other therapies. So ABA is typically a longer day. We do have some kids that go to schools, so we'll attend school functions for them. And we have some kids that come after school. They're getting very close to our social skills abilities, but they kind of need reminders on certain things, or if they get too overwhelmed, then that's when they need to work on their like emotional regulation piece. And then eventually when they graduate from ABA, they go into our social skills. And that's more of those like unwritten rules that unfortunately no one's written them down. So, so they kind of have to be taught specifically for some kids. And then the kids can also receive the other services that PAC provides too.
Yeah, so we also have an occupational therapy program. I was saying before about the sensory processing. One of the big things to be on the spectrum is a lot of kids have sensory issues that don't like the light, noises are too loud, and they can work on getting used to those things or learn how to purposefully avoid them in an appropriate way. They can give them some coping skills. So that's really amazing. They also have, a lot of kids on the spectrum have fine motor deficits. So they can work on that in occupational therapy. Then we have our speech program. So of course we're teaching language in the ABA department, but our speech department can also, they also work on language, obviously their speech, but they will work on articulation. They will kind of grow speech from a different angle. And they work together very well. And then finally, the SOS program I was saying, the feeding, they will, and I have to say it is a newer program. So
I was going to say, you just started that program.
We really
right?
did.
Yeah.
And it's one of our speech therapists and one of our OTs went and got the training, so they're able to offer it.
I was not included. I was very, very interested,
Yes.
but
Yeah. So she
You know
might
what
get
that
the
means
next
now,
one.
right?
I do. But as they work on it from two different perspectives, you know, and it's really interesting how they come at it, but they are working on the different textures and introducing new foods. And that one I really love because the whole family comes in. The parents are supposed to be in there for every session, and they're teaching the parents, because as much as in ABA, a parent can't spend 40 hours with us, but we do work with them so they know what we taught. But in this, they're going, listen, you have to feed them the next meal. So you need to see what they're doing with us.
Right.
So when you have them at home, you know, tomorrow morning for breakfast, they do what they just did at dinner here. And, you know, they teach them some strategies. There's no forcing. I know that's something I always hear people are afraid of, is that they're going to force feed a child. It's nothing like that, but it's amazing the stuff that I've had kiddos who were very picky and only ate certain things. And all of a sudden, In SOS, they've tried 3 new foods, and one of them was like mustard or something like super strong, and you're like, wow.
Wow.
And we're just seeing some great gains there too. So
That's
those are the services. The social skills, another thing about the social skills was that just a lot of kids, the parents get a diagnosis, especially like an older kid who gets a diagnosis. You get a 12-year-old, this is the first time they've been diagnosed. And the doctor says, well, these are the services for autism. And they'll say ABA, OT, they'll go through this list. And the parent comes to us with all that. And then we go, that kid has been in a mainstream school with no big problems for all these years. They're just having this trip up right now of a social issue. And they might have been struggling in different ways, but that's not our ABA kiddo. That's a kiddo who can go into our social skills program, and they can work on coping there, and they can work on the social cues that Rachel was saying, the unwritten rules that we all know just from, I know if you turn your back away from me right now, you don't want to talk about this anymore. But another another person doesn't read that cue, and they're going to keep talking about that topic, even if you've turned and walked away. So teaching them some of those rules so that they recognize, that's what that means, and also how to do that to other people when it's appropriate. That person's driving me crazy. Well, then stop acknowledging it. You need to walk away from them. So learning how to do those things. So those are the things that we're offering currently. We have the parent training. I go out, I try to train first responders.
That's awesome.
I try to go out and meet with businesses if they're interested. There's some, I was calling it PAC approved, I don't know, businesses that have come and said, hey, I want to make sure that we're friendly for a family with autism, and try to give them some tips in their particular store or their business and how they can benefit families. And that's what we've been doing at PAC.
So you got the medical industry, to your point. I mean, there's so many people that touch, it's just everyday life, right? You have to engage teachers. People are spending time with people. And to your point, you got EMS, you've got, all these people that are probably getting calls and having to deal with children or even adults who are autistic.
Absolutely. We keep kind of forgetting about the adults.
I want to get into adults quickly as well.
What does PAC stand for?
Pennsylvania Autism Action Center. But you don't have to have autism to come.
No, we're going to learn. We're going to, it's important to, especially if you're even dealing with people who, family, friends, things of that nature that have autistic children, even adults that, that are managing through life. Let's talk about adults. You're getting older, and it's interesting that you said 12-year-old, they finally, they said, they have autism. Wow. So, what's the percentage of younger children to older now that you're getting, or is there more awareness at a younger age, or we're starting to see some at older?
I might say there's more awareness in 2022.
Okay.
That people know when they're seeing it younger.
Yeah.
And some of these kids, if they were talking, even 10 years ago, they're talking, they don't have autism. That was the mindset. Even though they absolutely could fit into the spectrum, and there were ways that they could have gotten more help, a lot of kids didn't. And I had a man walk in once to the office. He was 50 and he was diagnosed, and he was in the midst of a divorce and couldn't understand what was going on with the divorce. Why is my wife divorcing me? Everything is fine. And the court mandated him to go to therapy, and they said, you have autism. That's why you're not seeing these social cues. And my heart broke. Wow. And I found him a psychologist that he could go talk to, because I'm like, I didn't have experience with 50. Right. That was beyond me. But I understood. My heart just broke for him, because he just didn't grasp it. He goes, well, just tell me what I need to do for autism. I said, I wish it was that simple and we could just work on some social cues, but I think you'd do better with some one-on-one therapy.
And isn't it sad that he went through all those years slipping through the cracks?
Yes. Yeah.
And no one identifying it or himself.
For so many people, you see it, and they've had heartaches and things that they couldn't get to because they weren't given the tools earlier on. And I think that's one of the great things about right now is because we are aware, we're able to give people tools earlier on, and they don't have to have some of these same heartaches.
Yeah.
And they have a better chance going on.
Yeah.
I really believe that.
To raise question for you, I don't think we got into because I want to get to the adults because I think it's important because, you know, we know now what it's going to take to kind of deal with children. But then you're becoming older in life, and now you're in a stage in your life where you either are going to be out there alone in social environments, or you need care, or because again, this you have many different variables from that perspective. But I wanted to quickly come back to Taraz on how did you get involved? Like, what made you get involved, even with the Special Olympics and your engagement? Like, what drove you to it?
So growing up, I watched my mom take care of people with special needs. So I seen my mom do it my whole life. So it was just kind of like, I want to do that. Like, I want to be like my mom. I want to take care of people who have special needs and who need people to help them through everyday life that may come so easy for us. And not to say that life is always easy for everybody, it's hard, but for things that come so easy to us that don't come so easy to them. Like, I want to do whatever I can to help them. So it was kind of just, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So as soon as I turned 18, I started working in a group home. I had to wait till I was 18 to start working in a group home. And when I started working in that group home, the ladies that I worked with completely changed my life, really. And they were involved in Special Olympics. So it was like, hey, the ladies have, practice tonight. You got to take them over to practice. I'm like, okay, cool. That sounds great. So we went, and I was like, this is amazing. How do I do this? And it was just like that. And it was just 22 years ago that I was like, this is
Special
amazing.
Olympics is
I
the
wanna do
lifeline
this.
for adults. That is the place right now for adults who are on the spectrum, who aren't living completely independent lives. Like, that's the social place to go. That's where I send people constantly because it's got so many opportunities.
Like I said, yes, we are a sports program,
Right.
but we have people who don't play sports. They don't ever play a single sport with us, but they are part of our family. They are part of our group, and what they gain out of it socially is more than any sport is going to give them. So,
Yeah.
I mean, some of them unfortunately don't have families, don't have, friends or anything like that outside of Special Olympics. So it really is, it's a home. It's
like a
family.
lifeline
It's,
for
it's
them.
like
Yeah.
it's like a lifeline, absolutely. So COVID
Wow.
was difficult for
Yeah.
them.
Oh, I
I'm
can
sure.
imagine.
My
You
gosh,
know,
yeah.
as most things, everything was kind of
Put on hold.
I
ripped
did
right out
see-
from underneath us.
I did see
So
people doing weightlifting during COVID. I thought that was really cool and creative. Like, they're doing some weightlifting stuff.
yeah, I mean, we tried very hard to obviously keep everybody engaged, and it was a lot of virtual stuff, which can be incredibly difficult for them. They don't all know how to navigate through social media and online and virtual Zooms, whatever the case may be. So it was difficult, definitely difficult for them.
Sure.
But we tried every day to make sure we were keeping them engaged and keeping them active, so that they weren't just sitting home doing nothing.
Just
Kind of just
or struggling through
or
it.
struggling because they're alone.
Right.
We do have adults who are alone. So
Yeah.
it was difficult.
That's sad. That's I think about that. I'm like, oh my God, a child that eventually grows up and has to be out there in the world by themselves, and hopefully they have the skills that they need to succeed in life. But then you have those that are, still need care, for the rest of their lives, possibly. How many adults how have you interacted with adults with autism? Are you offering services for them as well, or are you kind of telling them where to go, referring them to somewhere else to kind of work with them?
It's a mix. I'm
Okay.
gonna go with a sorta.
Okay.
We've always had a young adult social skills group, and it actually at one point we said it was going to go up to 21, and then our 21-year-old suddenly turned 25, and then at one point we had a 27-year-old who had been in the group for a while, and they said, I guess it goes up to as old as our oldest member is.
Right.
But that being said, during COVID, our social skills groups had diminished, and our other groups came right back really strong. And our young adult group didn't. I think that they had found some other outlets, which is a good thing. You know, like my biggest joy is when you don't come because you're out socializing, doing something that you got from here. You know, that you don't need this because you met some friends. Even it's happened to us where they met friends in group, and then them and their friends from group don't come anymore because they go and socialize on their own. I'm like, you know what? That's good.
That's good. Yeah.
You know, it's a good thing. But we are actually working on that. Rachel, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about the program we're working on right now, because I know you know more about it.
We're just working on reintroducing our young adult group. So we currently have ages 5 to 17 attending social skills. But as Michelle said, we were looking for a lot of people. It's a lot of juggling schedules, and now they're at the point that they have college and work and stuff that they have to go around. So it's just like trying to get together with your own friends and stuff. It's a lot of juggling schedules. So we're looking for as many young adults right now who want to. Typically, we don't start a group unless there's at least 4, I won't call them kids, but young adults, just because if someone's out sick that day and then there's only 2 and then or 1, and then it's not really a group.
Right.
So getting enough people who are interested and who can all come at the same time. And then, like Michelle was saying, the whole point of it is just to work on socialization. So we'll do like small little lessons, but our young adult groups really ran by the members that come. So if someone had a really hard day at work or has been struggling socially in making friends in the class or something, that's what we'll talk about. And if no one has anything, then we have lessons planned. And then we try and move that out into the community. So our older kids who are 16 and up, they get to go. We went to Country Junction. So they work on asking for like the tickets and the tokens for the arcade, work on ordering their own food and having that social interaction. We'll go into grocery stores and we'll have them choose what food they want to make. They'll make a grocery list. They'll have to budget for it. Then they have to go find it. Sometimes we hide some things in the grocery store, so they have to go up to an actual person and ask where it is.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And the shop right by in Broadheadsville has been absolutely amazing with that. They've been great about letting us come in and just kind of run amok in their store.
Absolutely.
And then we come back to the group and we'll actually make whatever it was. So then they work on like cooking and stuff. And we're currently in the process of redoing our kitchen area so that it's a little bit easier for the kids and more like at home with a stovetop and getting everything together. And then they have to work together. So there's that social piece of who's going to make the biscuits and who's going to make the meal and who's going to do dessert.
Mix stuff up and,
Yeah, so that executive functioning skill level.
Nice.
And together, they all come together and they always have a good time. I'm a music person, so I throw some music on in the background and just kind of make it into a big party. And everything that I do is all about teaching skills in a way that people are just having fun with it, whether it's playing with cars on the floor and they just think that they're playing around, and I'm asking them questions about like parts of the car or colors of the cars or anything like that, to making crazy different things. We used to do a teen night as well that we're hoping to bring back.
We'd like to bring back, yeah. The teen mixer.
Yeah,
Nice.
so we're really into mixers. So.
Hey, I like that. I like that.
And it's just an opportunity for these people who don't often get chances to go out and hang out with people. As we said, it's all just about inclusion. Everyone wants to hang out with each other and wants to feel included. And we'll all get together, and we don't typically like watch movies, but we did these movie quiz things.
Oh,
so
yes.
they play a clip of a film, and then we had to guess what the film was.
Oh, wow.
But then we also have like popcorn and
We had
milkshakes and
that Rockstar game. That went on for a year, I think. Every time we had a mixer, they were like, "We're playing Rockstar tonight," and they're all taking turns practicing singing. And
That was awesome. I love Rockstar.
that game was great. I had enough of it. No, but it was we had fun with it. We really did. So
That's awesome. I think again the key word I was hearing is inclusion, and I think that goes across the board. Making sure that you don't treat them differently than you would treat anyone else just because of being autistic. I think even adults, children and adults alike, and being that human friendly element in somebody's life, to make sure that if somebody's having a challenge that you're there to help them and not judge them.
But it's also the other way as well. A lot of times you get people who are underestimating the kids.
Yeah.
But
That's a good point.
and like we said, if they're nonverbal, doesn't mean that they don't understand
They don't
what's going on.
understand.
But at the same time, you get like teachers and parents that then like overestimate their skill level and like, okay, now I want them to sit and stare at their work for 30 minutes. And it's like, okay, but no one else in a general education class is also going to be able to sit
Yeah.
for 30 minutes. So
Right.
having the expectations of
Realistic.
yeah, like
To be real.
we're not asking them to be an absolute angel, which they all are, but we're just asking them to be the same as every other kid. No high expectations, no low expectations, right there in the middle. And I think that's a big thing. Is like you don't want them to completely change who they are.
Yeah.
You just want them to fit in, and that's
Yeah.
what everyone wants to just
Right.
fit in.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I don't know if you have any other questions. We are at
Are
the
we
at
at
the
the end?
end of the segment, and man, we could probably
I
still
do.
keep
I
going.
think we could keep
How much time do we have?
We actually are at yeah, right. If you got a question,
Oh,
we can.
All I wanted to ask was, for each of you, what would you like to see for the future
That's a
of
good
your
question.
of PAC, the future of Special Olympics? Where would you like to
Yeah.
see it heading?
I would be interested in growing some more adult programs. I think that there's so much need for people, I kind of call them tweeners. They're too high functioning to get any of the supports they're supposed to get, but they're struggling when they try to go into a regular workspace.
Mhm.
They don't quite understand all of the nuances. So something I've been really loving the idea of growing something for that population to kind of help them go in that direction.
Awesome. That's
And
good.
funding you would need
Yeah.
for that.
Yes.
And what do you suppose funding could come from some state programs or grants?
So yeah, there's
or?
OVR, and I think that some people can qualify for OVR even when they have an advanced IQ and the abilities. Sometimes they can still qualify for OVR. So it would probably be coming there. But some of the programs out there for that utilize OVR training aren't going into an office, into a tech agency. They're going into a supermarket and that's okay. That's amazing.
Mhm.
But there are people who are really, they're college bound and then they're career bound, but they do still need some support. So I have this vision of trying to grow something a little bit in that area, and it's something I've been thinking of.
That's good. That's good. It's always good to develop, and as you experience what's going on, and it's an eye opener, right? And gives you opportunity of another vision.
Right.
I gotta be honest, I have like 10 other ideas.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Look, it's always great to have ideas, right? And
Yes.
then you start working towards those milestones of that
Yes.
vision. So I love that. I love that.
I think there's a lot of resources out there for like the extremes.
Mm-hmm.
But as she said, there's those tweeners that are in between. There's kids that they're not having behavioral issues, but they could use some help with their skill levels, but because they're not screaming and tantruming, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. So there's always that in between kid. If they don't fit the mold, which, as we've said all session, no one is the same on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So if they don't fit that mold, there's not as many services available, or it can't
Insurance
be
isn't
modified
as
to them.
supportive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's always room to grow those in between programs.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And Taraz, what would you like to see in the future?
I think it's kind of the same growth. I think growth in many different aspects. I mean, growth as far as growing our athlete base, as many people as we service and work with in the community, in the county, there are more, and we know that there are more.
Mhm.
So growth as far as reaching all of the individuals who can benefit from our program,
Mhm.
and growth as far as growing our relationships with other organizations, other programs, other people in the community that are all literally working for the same goal,
Right.
but working separately for the same goal. I think
Mhm.
everybody needs
Yeah.
to really work together. So
Yeah.
I would
Yep.
say growth is most certainly the biggest thing. So
Awesome. I agree. I loved it. I
Oh my
love.
God, I learned
thank you
so
so
much.
much. I think we've learned quite a bit. I'm sure there's more we could learn. With that said, I want to thank you all for coming. I appreciate you all for coming and saying yes and being here today. Michelle, Rachel, Therese, Taraz.
You got
Taraz.
it. You got it.
Girl, I gotta make, they mess up my name, so I have to say it. And our amazing Jane, Spicy, and this is your girl Stefire. I want to thank you again for coming. Amazing day, amazing discussion. Again, for anybody who's watching, please make sure you reach out. If there's any questions you have, even if you reach out to us, we can definitely direct you. But we do appreciate you being on, and we really appreciate everything that you offer.
All of you, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just amazing. And it takes special individuals to be able to do what you do. And we do thank you for that. And to the teachers
Thank you.
and everybody else who's also working towards the same goal here. With that said, this is the Sistahship. We thank you all for joining us today, where we're here every Sunday, 2 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Sistahship Gynesis Radio Network. And this is your girl, Stefire. With that said, we want to wish you a blessed Sunday. Thank you again. We'll see you next week right here on thesistahship.com. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, we on a Sistahship. Come with us, we on a Sistahship. Yeah, we on a Sistahship. Roll with us, we on a Sistahship.
Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it.
We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya. Substance, sis, you know we on a mission, no games. Help each other get over some things, build strength, bring change. Cause we've been through the rain, now it's time to shine like bling. Let's talk about life skills. We building up our quality to right wills. We rolling out of poverty, love heals. So we become the prodigy of how a Sistahship could be a really hot commodity. Stand together, we united, hold hands. Support each other dreams and our plans, doing everything we can. Just to show we understand the power of a friendship, fam. Live life on purpose, together we learn it. Yeah, let's talk, we don't wanna see you hurt. And we here for each other, no matter the color, networking. That's for sure and for certain. Come on, yeah, we on a Sistahship. Come with us, we on a Sistahship. Yeah, we on a Sistahship. Roll with us, we on a Sistahship. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya.
Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it.